at number 10 of our scary lost episodes, we have Squidward's Suicide. Squidward's Suicide is a reportedly lost episode of SpongeBob SquarePants, where the fictionally down and out character Squidward kills himself with a shotgun. The episode first gained attention when an alleged intern at Nickelodeon wrote their story on 7chan. They said that during their internship they were present as the show's production team were reviewing the premiere episode of season 4. However, as the footage played, they were slowly but surely exposed to an utter horror that was not in the original approved script. Someone actually had made the episode without permission and scheduled it for airtime. Luckily they checked and watched it before it went out. The episode is apparently on YouTube, but like, is it though? My favourite comment on the purported lost episode comes from DarkNorX, who said, "Saw 51 seconds and I'm thinking, who's the 8-year-old who's new to Windows Movie Maker who made this?" Right? Is it just an urban legend? I kinda think so. Coming in at number 9, we have Powerpuff Girls episode AKURYO Bubbles. You know I love Powerpuff Girls, and I know that you guys loved our dark Powerpuff Girl theory, so I'm thinking that you'll like this. It is rumoured that there was once a particularly dark episode of the Powerpuff Girls but never aired on TV. It seems that in the Cartoon Network episode, an alternate version of Bubbles was created who was zombie-like and homicidal. It seems that the episode was far too dark to air, and now, even weirder, the creepypasta page that first publicised the details of the episode has also been deleted by the author. Weird. Coming in at number 8, we have the Halloween episode of Family Matters. This lost Halloween special episode did allegedly air once, but since then has reportedly been banned by television networks and its tapes destroyed, or so the legend goes. The episode follows the reoccurring character of Urkel, who decides that he wants to become a ventriloquist and gets a doll that looks like a smaller plastic version of him, and he calls it Stevel, like evil but with st. The doll gets struck by lightning and comes alive, and that tells Urkel that actually he's gonna murder his whole family, which he then does proceed to do. So dark, he runs over the kids with a car, he decapitates a woman, and he puts her head in a jack-in-the-box. Great! He also sucks Eddie up a chimney like a backwards scary Santa. The Stevel doll is said to have been dismembered and flushed away at the end of the episode, but he emerges from a toilet to tell Urkel that he's gonna suck his soul. This doesn't sound like a family-friendly party to me. I say it again, Ooh, coming in at number 7, we have The Wicked Witch of the West on Sesame Street. The 7th season episode of Sesame Street, called The Wicked Witch of the West, has been lost to the ether, and it sounds like honestly that's for the best. In 1976, Margaret Hamilton was said to have reprised her role as the Wicked Witch in The Wizard of Oz. She's the most horrifying baddie, and she was there on the Muppets TV show, a kids show. It seems that the episode featured the mean green flying machine and was supposed to teach kids about managing fear and intimidation, only it actually really scared and intimidated them. I'm all for a strong female lead, but Margaret did look even scarier in this episode than she did in The Wizard of Oz. A slew of parents wrote into the show to complain. One parent even said that her 3.5-year-old child had been disturbed and frightened. Subsequently, the episode was pulled, but over time the footage has been lost. Side note, I used to work at the London Palladium Theatre throughout the run of The Wizard of Oz on stage, and every single day at least one child would run out of the auditorium because they were scared of the witch, and like, I get it, she's scary. Okay, this isn't just an episode, but a whole lost movie that was too scary to air. Coming into number 6, we have Nickelodeon's Crybaby Lane. Some years ago, a legend circulated that there was a lost teen movie from Nickelodeon that was just too scary to air. The show was said to be about a bad father who malnourished and mistreated his conjoined twin sons. Being twins, of course, one of them was evil. Eventually the kids died from their treatment, and the father separated them with a rusty saw and buried them at different parts of the town to keep his secret being spread. Classic rusty saw. It's said that the evil twin could be heard screaming from beyond the grave. Now, long story short, a group of teenagers accidentally summon the spirit of the twin, who then possesses the townsfolk. After negative feedback when the show was supposed to air in the year 2000, Nickelodeon denied the movie's existence for years and years, and it was scrubbed from all records. That wasn't until the internet surfaced the legend, and they decided that actually they wanted to air it in 2011, 11 years later. Suddenly, it wasn't so lost, and suddenly it was slightly more appropriate for our crazy age. Coming into number 5, we have Top Gear Series 9 Episode 1. The season opener for Top Gear Season 9 was the first episode after host Richard Hammond nearly died in September 2006 in a high-speed dragster crash that was being filmed as part of the Top Gear series. The dragster, called Vampire, was travelling at 288 miles per hour at the time of the crash and left Hammond in a severe coma for 2 weeks. Afterwards, it was revealed that he suffered from post-traumatic amnesia and a 5-second memory. He made an apparently miraculous recovery and appeared in a TV interview 3 months later. Since then, he admits that he doesn't remember the interview at all. Richard Hammond returned to the show in late January 2007 and talked about the crash. Since then, the episode has never been repeated and cannot be found. Cameras were rolling when the crash happened, but of course the dragster episode was never created. Some of the footage has been aired, but most of it is unseen, and I think that's probably for the best. Richard Hammond has requested that the crash never be mentioned on the show again, and by and large that has been respected. Coming in at number 4, we have OOF from Hannibal. Hannibal is already a scary TV show that centres around a cannibal and stars the ever fantastic and horrifying Mads Mikkelsen as Dr. Hannibal Lecter. If an episode was too scary to air, you bet that it was pretty awful. The episode, which means egg in English, is about a police investigation in which families are getting killed and the mothers are the last to die. Horribly. It turns out that the children are being groomed to kill their families, which is very dark stuff. Now, the episode was pulled before it could air in the wake of the Sandy Hook disaster and the Boston bombings. Clips, however, have been released on the internet, and I can confirm that it's disturbing. Coming into number 3, we have Tom's Basement. Tom and Jerry has been a popular cartoon since the 1940s. These days it continues in the Tom and Jerry show. I'm sure that you would all have heard of it, but if you haven't, Tom is a mean and murderous cat, and Jerry is a wise mouse who loves a trick. Episodes usually involve some sort of kerfuffle, but things have never got too dark. Or have they? According to the good people of the internet, there is a lost episode called Tom's Basement. The episode is said to feature Tom Cat's abusive owner. Jerry manipulates situations so that Tom's owner will think that the cat did something bad, and so Tom would be punished. It seems that the episode ends with both Tom and Jerry killing the human owner and hiding the body in the basement. Following that, Jerry also kills Tom. Jolly D. This sounds like a little bit more like Itchy and Scratchy than Tom and Jerry, but apparently it did exist. So, speaking of The Simpsons, at number 2, we have the popular urban legend, the lost episode Dead Bart. This is a classic creepypasta and a reported lost episode of The Simpsons. The episode was said to have been created in 1989, so we're talking a 30-year-old lost episode here. The story goes that Matt Groening, The Simpsons creator, was under a lot of pressure to finish the first season for airing immediately. It's said that he became paranoid and depressed. It seems that he created an episode that was extremely dark and inconsistent. During the episode, the Simpsons are on a plane and Bart reportedly breaks a window and is sucked out to his death. This actually did happen to a human in 2018, so maybe wasn't much of a narrative stretch. Anyway, it seems that the episode was deemed way too dark and was destroyed. Groening was offered psychological help. But was it destroyed? One viewer claims that they have seen it in its entirety, and they say that at the end there's a shot in a graveyard that has headstones for a number of celebrities in it. The dates on the headstone, including that of Michael Jackson and George Harrison, were accurate to those who died in real life. Now, obviously the episode was made long before they did die, but the tombstone somehow knew the year that they were going to pass on. Oddly, it seems that decades later, Simpsons animator David Silverman was at a fan expo. When questions were thrown open to the crowd, a fan who had heard of the legendary missing episode asked about it. It said that Silverman promptly exited the stage. No explanation was given for the walkout. Finally, coming into number 1, we have SUICIDEMOUSE.AVI. A classic Disney urban legend. Suicide Mouse is said to be a lost early Walt Disney animation. It features a black and white Mickey Mouse walking along by buildings, head down looking glum. The footage is accompanied by dissonant sounds and then loud screaming. Take a look, should you dare. The lost episode is supposedly on YouTube, and oh my god, what a racket, blimey! The video has been watched 1.25 million times and has a lengthy video description, but like, ain't nobody got time to be reading that out. There's a link in the description box to the video if you fancy reading it for yourself. The story goes that Walt Disney made the short amid a bout of depression, but of course it never aired because it's just so disturbing. I personally do not have time for all that screaming. Shh.
At number 10 we have The Grieving, The Amazing World of Gumball. To start this list off, we got something pulled out of the world of creepypasta. Of course, with creepypasta you never know if these things are real or fake, except for Goatman. He's real. He's got a super lean body and can jump like an Olympian. Always be aware of Goatman. This one is about an episode of The Amazing World of Gumball that apparently aired late one night on Adult Swim. The person writing the creepypasta said that she was up around midnight when the headline came on saying there was going to be a special episode of the show. Now the episode kicks off with just Gumball sobbing, followed by shots of his father sobbing, and then both Gumball and his parents in the principal's office as the principal tells the whole family that Gumball's brother and sister were murdered. It's followed by graphic scenes of them finding the bodies and even Gumball's sister's decapitated head. I guess this episode was intended for an older audience. At number 9 we have Man's Best Friend. You guys have heard me talk about the deadly duo before. Ren and Stimpy were the kings of showing kids things they were too young to watch. The show had so much violence and sexually suggestive material in it, it probably should have been on HBO. There's no way this could pass for a kids show in this day and age. I'm so glad I got to grow up in an era where I could watch this on network television. In one particular episode, Ren and Stimpy got a new owner. With this new owner, the two of them are repeatedly punished and screamed at. And at times they're even rewarded with things like cigar-shaped dog treats. Near the end of the episode, their psychotic new owner wants to teach them how to protect him. He does this by having Ren beat the hell out of him. Ren, being the ruthless maniac that he is, beats the man so close to death he probably talked to the devil himself. I don't really need to give you any more details as to why this episode was lost to us. At number 8 we have Doug's Real Life. If you're old enough to remember the cartoon Doug, you know it was about a kid who was living a pretty ordinary life, and sometimes the show was spruced up with a vivid imagination. It was a little too plain for me when I was younger. I was consumed by the anime era, so if a show didn't have superpowers or crazy hair, I probably wasn't going to watch it. But in this particular episode of Doug, it starts with Doug just writing in a dark room. The shot stays on him long enough to seem weird. It's followed by then Doug walking to school still in silence. As this is happening, it seems the footage is glitching out. Then when Doug gets to school, he finds out he flunked the test and everyone laughs at him. Finally, the episode wraps up with Doug having a vivid hallucination of his parents screaming at him for him failing the test, and then he goes back to his room and he starts saying, "I don't know which one is real." Very weird. At number 7 we have Ed, Edd, and Eddy. Oh baby, we got another one that's apparently secretly aired. It's of Ed, Edd, and Eddy, the show about the dumbest dudes in town who are best friends, and when they get together they're almost dumber as a party than they were apart. Well, in this episode the show wasn't really about 3 fun-loving morons, but it starts with a dark shot on the usual scenery that the show takes place in, but this time it was very dark and unsettling. As the episode goes on, it seems that the show is deteriorating, as if the world and the quality of the show is dying. The episode ends with a shot on Eddie's house as everything goes to black. Number 6. Blue's Clues, No Clues. Jesus Christ, there's even dark, disturbing episodes of Blue's Clues? We can't have anything nice anymore. Next thing you know, you're gonna tell me that Chick-fil-A is homophobic or something. Huh. Now this one is probably another creepypasta, but I thought it was interesting enough to put it on this list. Apparently someone found an old VHS of Blue's Clues in their home. They decided to pop it in and see how much of the episode they still remember. Turns out it was none, because the episode started with Steve showing everyone that he had killed Blue, then proceeded to murder all of his talking friends that he usually goes to throughout the show. I'm gonna say that this one is a big old fake because who still has a VCR plugged in? If I found an old VHS I wanted to watch, I would have to order a VCR from China and wait for it to get to me. At number 5 we have Candle Cove. This is one of the most famous creepypastas out there. What makes this one so popular is there is apparently a large community of people who swear the show is real even though there is no record of it. Well, I mean, you can say that about a lot of things like religion, but we don't need to get into there. The last thing I need is a bunch of religious fanatics attacking me because I made fun of their Sky Lord. But apparently back in the 70s there was a show called Candle Cove. It was about pirates and a skeleton that would try to eat a little girl's skin. Very child friendly. One person who swears the show is real and talked to his mom about it said that his mom told him every time he would go and watch Candle Cove, it would just be him staring at the static on the TV. Number 4. Axis Power HETALIA, episode 23.5. Axis Power HETALIA was a show where every character was a different nation, and they would have character traits based on that nation. Nothing like a show with subtle undertones of racism. I love it! Well, one episode has the Axis powers stuck on an island. We got Germany, Japan, and Italy. As night begins to close in, we see Germany and Japan whispering to each other. They wait for Italy to go to sleep, and after he does, the two gang up on him and drown him in the water. They then cut his stomach open and start roasting his organs. If you're stuck on an island, sometimes you gotta eat your friend's liver. That's life. Number 3, not long enough. Futurama. If it wasn't bad enough, now I gotta ruin Futurama for you. There's not a lot that this show could do to take it too far. Half the episodes follow an alcoholic robot who loves hookers, stealing, and lying. But the internet has said there was a lost episode of the show that starts like most Futurama episodes, with the crew of Planet Express making a delivery. They fly to a planet with only one house on it. They bring the delivery to the door, and there's a giant ugly alien there who takes it, opens the package revealing a knife, and then stabs himself. No one reacts. The crew then flies back to their home in New York and everyone is gone. Fry then starts crying and then goes to the cryo chamber where he was originally frozen and then refreezes himself. He then wakes up later and his body is decaying. Leela and Bender show up and they say, "Not long enough." Who knows what that means? At number 1, we have Creepypasta titled Lost Episodes. To cap this list off, we got a collection of lost tapes made by someone who's only identified by the name Sid. As the story goes, Sid had a passion for cutting together VHS footage to make sort of new tapes. It was something he would do ever since he was a little kid. He was pretty good at it, and as he got older, the footage he would mash together would get darker and darker. Eventually, he got so obsessed with mashing this footage together that he lost contact with all his old friends. Years went by, and then one day, one of Sid's old friends came by looking for him. He went to his parents' old house because he apparently still lived there. What they found was both of Sid's parents dead and Sid in the garage. His body was in a chair rotting, with wires flowing out of him in every which direction, some connected to a television screen. Scattered around everywhere were some old VHS tapes with some of the most disturbing footage you could imagine. It was basically episodes of television shows spliced together with horrible torture scenes. It was truly grotesque. Alright, we're starting off this list with something I never knew existed. At number 10, we have Grinch Night. I bet you didn't know there was a Halloween version of How the Grinch Stole Christmas. This is blowing my mind right now. They tried to do a Grinch spin-off and it bombed, like that TV show Joey. No one wants a Friends spin-off, okay dude? Well, this short movie is about Urukiah, who lives in Whoville and goes to confront the Grinch on Grinch Night. What is Grinch Night? It's when the Grinch would come to Whoville to terrorize everyone with a wagon full of horrors. Now, in order for Uri to defeat the Grinch and send him back to his hole in the hill, he has to jump into the Grinch's wagon and make it through a series of challenges, all of which have the terrible feeling of a mushroom trip. There's some pretty twisted imagery in here that would give all the people tripping at Burning Man cardiac arrest. But in the end, Urukiah is able to defeat the Grinch's challenges and then sends them packing all the way home. But what I don't understand is that at the end of How the Grinch Stole Christmas, he understood how to be a good guy. But now he's being evil again? Like, what happened? Where's the through line on the information here? I don't understand what's going on. At number 6, we have SpongeBob Schizophrenia. Sounds like a good time, I guess. Alright, enough with the light stuff. If we're gonna do a list of lost episodes, it needs to be dark and twisted real fast. Like my uncle's political opinions after 6 Mike Hard Lemonades. So this episode was apparently found in the Nickelodeon office and was on a VHS tape, which is super weird because I'm pretty sure they keep everything digital over there. This episode had no title either, it was just labeled Season 10 Premiere. The episode opens up on SpongeBob in his home, sitting in the dark, and he says to himself, "The shadows play with me." He then pulls out a handgun and shoots his pet snail Gary. My god, dude, you don't even give this episode a second to settle in. It's gore right from the get-go. And then it goes into SpongeBob killing Patrick and Squidward. He kills Squidward by sneaking into his house at night and then cutting him up with a chainsaw, Scarface style. And then he kills Patrick with a pencil. Damn, I didn't know SpongeBob had like John Wick skills. The episode ends with SpongeBob killing himself with a knife and then everything goes to static. Sounds like a great time. At number 8, we have Sweet Revenge. We're gonna stick in the Nick Hidden episodes and move over to Fairly Odd Parents for an episode that's titled Sweet Revenge. I couldn't find out how this episode was found other than creepypasta. The episode opens up on Timmy in his room and he hears the front door open. He then goes downstairs to see who it is and it's his dad covered in blood holding a machete. I think he was going for like a new look. It's followed up by Timmy running up to his room and his dad slowly following him up the stairs. Cosmo tries to save Timmy from his newly psychotic father, but instead gets a machete right in the face, Tarantino style. Wanda then poofs Timmy to safety, where he tries to call the cops, but then when when he makes a call to the police, it's not a police officer's voice on the other end. It's Timmy's father. Whoa, what's going on? It's M. Night Shyamalan. Then it's followed up by Timmy warping back to his home and a close-up on Cosmo's dead body. A binary code runs across Cosmo's eyes, which apparently means he was first, you are next. At number 7, we have Goodbye SpongeBob. Why leave the Nick universe when there's so much creepy stuff in it? Now, few people swear this episode is real. It was apparently uploaded to YouTube and then taken down shortly after. It starts with Patrick knocking on SpongeBob's door. SpongeBob answers, and Patrick informs him that Sandy died in a plane crash. I didn't know like squirrels flew planes, like that's so weird. But then it cuts to a funeral and it's shots of Sandy's mangled body. They probably should have gone for a closed casket. After this, it's SpongeBob crying at home, writing a suicide note, and then he hangs himself. You're underwater though, like how do you hang yourself? You would need a weighted vest or something. This doesn't make any sense. I'm glossing over what were the reason why people would watch it. It's because they want to see gore, not because they want the logic of how you hang yourself underwater. Anyway, number 6, we have Courage the Cowardly Dog. Okay, this was one of my favorite shows as a kid, so this lost episode did creep me out a little bit because it kind of played on my nostalgia. The episode apparently aired after midnight on Cartoon Network. It opened on Courage looking into the camera with glowing red eyes and then cut to him walking down a road while carrying a knife, and he was also laughing to himself maniacally. Eventually it shows that he's walking to his famous house in the middle of nowhere, and when he opens the door, his owner Muriel has beaten her husband Eustace to death. Which I'm kind of fine with because Eustace was always addicted to Courage anyways. Then sweet little Courage kills Muriel. What the hell, man? After this, he takes both their bodies to the basement and throws them on a stack of bodies and starts painting some pentagrams in their blood. Holy crap, I guess he's not cowardly anymore. I mean, keeping a stack of bodies in your basement isn't exactly courageous, but it's certainly not cowardly. At number 5, we have Dora's Real Life. Now it's time for kids shows. Yay, this is good for my psychological state. This lost episode of Dora was picked up by a mom at a yard sale. She watched it with her daughter and it was nothing like a real episode of Dora. It was basically Dora in the slums where everything was polluted and terrible. It was followed up by her trying to make her way to the big city where she encountered crackheads and murderers and finally ends up with her dead. Ugh. This mom should have probably gave this a run through before she showed it to her daughter. Never trust a yard sale. At number 4, we have DEADSPONGE.AVI. More SpongeBob. It's almost like there's more stories about SpongeBob lost episodes than any other character because he's more popular and people write these themselves and none of these are real. Ooh. Well, apparently you can find this one on some video sharing sites, but it's very hard to find and probably terrible for your computer unless you love spyware. It starts as a normal episode of SpongeBob. He's headed to Mrs. Puff's driving school to get his license. And then later, while he's driving with Mrs. Puff in the passenger seat, he crashes, killing them both instantly in a disturbing, gory scene. After that, it cuts to a depressing funeral. Now this is followed by some disturbing imagery of both their disfigured bodies and a strange Russian voice talking in the background. And we all know Russian is the scariest language. At number 3, we have Dollhouse, EPITAPHONE. Dollhouse was a short-lived show that was created by Joss Whedon. I never saw it, but from what I hear, it has kind of a cult following. The premise of the show was about a place called the Dollhouse, where kidnapped people would be taken, have their brains wiped, and then turned into escorts. Doesn't sound like a fun way to spend your weekend. Well, the series finale was supposed to take place in a dystopian future where the mind-wiping tech had gained the ability to think for itself, and I bet you can imagine what the world would look like, a pretty dark place. Escorts running around everywhere, trying to have sex with people for high prices, but when everyone's an escort, who pays the bill? No, I'm just kidding. I have no idea what this episode was because Fox said it was too weird and they never aired it. At number 2, we have Pokemon, the Ice Cave. You know, sometimes cultures just don't match up well. Things that are offensive here might not be offensive in Japan and vice versa. Well, in this episode of Pokemon where they go to the Ice Cave, there was some executives that said we can't air this episode of Pokemon. And the people at Pokemon were like, why? And the executives were like, well, it's because of the Pokemon Jinx. And the people at Pokemon were like, what's wrong with Jinx? And the executives were like, well, it kinda looks like she's doing blackface. And I don't think it would be good for our ratings. So the episode never aired in North America. Now I'm mixed race. I'm half white and half black, and I've never thought that Jinx was maybe something doing blackface. But I completely understand why the higher ups at a big company wouldn't want anything like that on their network if they thought it might offend or if it would be interpreted as blackface. I mean, if I thought Jinx was trying to do anything, it would be trying to kill it at RuPaul's Drag Race. I mean, look at her hair, it's perfect. At And number 1 on our list is the Star Wars Holiday Special. Okay, this might not be scary like Nightmare Scary, but it's absolutely horrifying that this exists. It was a Star Wars Holiday Special where Han Solo and Chewbacca go to the Wookiee home planet to celebrate Life Day. I know we're not supposed to swear on this channel, but what the f? Why did this happen? Who ever asked for this? Nobody wants a Wookiee Christmas, are you serious? This is just so strangely American for a movie that has laser swords. There's even a Carrie Fisher musical number. Oh, and you'll have to dig deep for this bad boy. If you can find a copy of it, I bet it's worth a ton of money. It only aired once, and then it was buried in some copies of the original VHS. And thank God, I want this whole thing to burn in hell. I'm gonna call up George Lucas and ask him if Life Day's canon. This thing is a steaming pile of hot garbage, and that's why it's number 1 on today's list.